Welcome to week 30. Today we will be doing our usual rhythm warm-up, including 16th notes. We'll be doing our introduction to the half diminished, or also known as the minor 7 flat 5 sound, with the usual drill. And then we will be learning the Locrian mode to go along with that. And to embrace this new sound that we're going to be exploring today, we're going to be doing a reading piece that I composed called the Melancholy Etude. And it is going to be combining familiar chords and scales that we already know to get new sounds, especially in that melancholy vibe. All right, so let's go on over to the drum and get warmed up. For today's rhythm warm-up, we will continue with only 2 lines, as we're going to do the whole process on each of these lines twice. The first time we will be saying and playing, and the second time we will be adding the metronome. Remember, when you sing and play, you can move through it steadily, or if you need to pause beat by beat to remember which combination of 16th note you're looking at, that's totally acceptable as well. So let's go ahead and get started. On line 1, we'll be saying and playing without the metronome first. 1, 2, and 3 E and 4 E and 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 E and 2. 3 E and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E. Switch hands. 1, 2 and 3 E and 4 E and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 E and 2, 3 E and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E. Top line, hands together. 1, 2 and 3 E and 4 E and 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 E and 2, 3 E and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E. Excellent. Now we're going to add the metronome at 40 BPM, and the clicks of the metronome will represent the downbeats. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Top line. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's take a look at line 2 now, saying and playing. 1, 2, and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E, 4. 1, 2, and 3 E, 4. 1 E, 2 E, 3, and change your hands. 1, 2, and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E, 4. 1, 2, and 3 E, 4. 1 E, 2 E, 3, and hands together, top line. 1 and 2 and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E, 4. 1, 2, and 3 E, 4. 1 E, 2 E, 3 and 4 E and Excellent. And now last but not least, let's do our metronome at 45, and we will hear the click on the upbeat with line 2. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Switch your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Hands together, top line. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we have it. Now that we're all warmed up, let's head back to the piano. Today, I want to introduce you to the half diminished sound, also known as the minor 7 flat 5. So let's take a look on the keyboard at how we construct that. So we know that when we first start with 4-note chords, we start with our do, mi, so, and ti. And we call this the major 7 sound. Then the next thing that we did is we flatted the ti. And we had the dominant sound, right? Then what we just finished doing was flatting the mi and the ti, and we call that the minor 7 sound. So now the half diminished would be flatting the only note that we have left to flat, which is the so. And so here we have our flat mi, flat so, and flat ti, and we get the half diminished sound, also known as the minor 7 flat 5. Now this is a really lovely sound. It's very dreamy, but it can also lead to being melancholy as well, as we'll see in today's etude. For today's half diminished chords, we will be looking at C minor 7 flat 5, G7 minor flat 5, and D minor 7 flat 5. But before we get into that, let's quickly review the Locrian scale that goes with all of those. So the Locrian mode is the 7th mode of the major scale, all right? And this is one of the ones I warned you of. If you look here, it's in fine print, right? But we have the flat 2, the flat 3, the flat 5, the flat 6, and the flat 7. It's very hard to remember that, and so it's much easier for Locrian to think I'm going to play from T to T in a major scale that I already know. If we look down, the formula that we've been using has been adjusted. So we have X is the T of scale Y, and T is, remember, our 7th scale degree. So we will play from X to X in the key of scale Y, right? So an example of A flat minor 7 flat 5 or A flat half diminished would be A flat is the T of A. Actually, it's G sharp is the T of A, but you get the idea. So what you would do is you would play from that A flat to A flat in the key of A, as we'll see in just a moment when we take a look at today's chords on the keyboard. Let's get things started with C minor 7 flat 5 or C half diminished. We'll begin with our right hand inversions. And now let's do our left hand inversions. Let's do one single chord between both of our hands. And now let's think about C Locrian. C is the T of D flat major, right? So we'll play the key of D flat major, except starting on C, and then we'll put the chord in our left hand. You see, you get that really lovely dramatic sound when you do it that way. Let's switch our hands. moving along, we're going to now look at G minor 7 flat 5, starting with our right hand inversions. Let's do our left hand inversions. And now, let's do our hands together, but one chord. And now let's talk about G Locrian, okay? So G is the T of A flat. So we'll be playing A flat major, except we'll be starting on G, and then we'll add the G half diminished chord in our left hand, and it will go like this. Okay, let's try switching that up. Last but not least, we'll be looking at D minor 7 flat 5, or D half diminished, starting with our right hand inversions. And now we'll do our left hand inversions. And now we will do one chord, but with both of our hands. And now let's talk about D Locrian. So D is the T of E flat. So we'll play the E flat major scale, except now we'll be starting from D, and we'll put the D half diminished chord in our left hand. Beautiful. And let's try the chord in the right hand and the scale in the left hand. Let's dive a little deeper into the minor 7 flat 5 sound with today's Melancholy Etude. All right. Now the first thing that we're going to want to look at is our key signature. And since we know that it's melancholy and we know that we're going to be exploring the minor 7 flat 5, we can assume that this is probably going to be a minor key, and therefore we know that the relative minor of E flat major is C minor, okay? So we're going to be thinking C minor. Now the thing is that what the minor 7 flat 5 really allows you to do is it allows you to have a 2-5-1 to a minor key as opposed to a major key. Now if you think about it, a normal 2-5-1 is a 2, a minor 2, a dominant 7th 5, and then a 1, right? But when your 1 is darker and it's a minor key, you need there to be a little bit more leading tones. And that's why instead of a minor 2, you have a half diminished 2. And then a lot of times, instead of a dominant 7th, you can even see some sort of extension with like maybe a flat 9 is a very popular thing to see in a minor 2-5-1. All right, so we're in the key of C minor. Now, if we kind of scan this piece to see where is our first C minor going to be, it looks like it's going to be in about this area right here. And so that can kind of start to reveal the shape of where our 2-5-1 is probably going to be. And so let's take a look at that. So here, if we're thinking in the key of C minor, then that would mean that our 2 is going to be based off of a D of some sort. And you do have that. So here we have our D minor 7 with the added flat 5. All right, and then that's going to go to a G7. Now it will have the flat 9, but that flat 9 is actually being added in the melody. Let's take a look real quick. Now at first glance, it might look like this is an F minor, right? But we do end up adding the D, and surprise, surprise, in every single minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished, there actually is a minor chord in there, right? So sometimes one of the easy things you can do to identify or find a half diminished chord is to find that minor chord inside of it and then add the do, right? So in this case, we have the F minor chord and then the D is right over here, okay? Like I said, we have a regular G7 chord right here, and remember, anytime you see that little squished, those two little squished intervals right there, that second, you'll know that that's some kind of inverted seventh chord, and in this case, it's our inverted G7 chord. And the A flats up top are what give us that flat 9. So a lot of times when you are seeing extensions like flat 9 or whatnot, the melody a lot of times is taking care of that for us, all right? That spicy note is usually contained in the melody, all right? Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna move over to C minor, all right? That's where we have arrived, but you're gonna see that we have a traveling note, all right? So our C is gonna do a little walk down all the way to A, all right? So don't let this throw you off. Remember, we don't wanna be reading black dots. We want to see, what's happening on the piano. And of course, when people get to this, they might think, okay, I'm already seeing some sharps and flats and naturals, and it might be confusing, but really what this is asking us to do on the piano is we're keeping the middle notes the same, right? So we don't have to worry about those. And then the only thing that's happening is the C walks down to B, walk down to B flat, and then finally to A natural. So it's pretty easy little one traveling note in there, okay? Moving right along, we have our D minor 7 with the flat 5, and then that is going to be immediately followed by the G7 flat 9 once again. Now one way you can also think of that shape that you're making in your left hand right now is that this is a fully diminished chord, all right? Fully diminished chords and flat 9s go together really well. We're going to see that when we study our fully diminished chords, which is going to be the very next sound that we look at. But we have seen fully diminished chords before, and so I just wanted to go ahead and point that out. Now where this leads us is actually somewhere pretty interesting, and that is the C minor 7, but this time with the flat 5, and then we're going to be flip-flopping at this point. A good old-fashioned just flip-flopping with its dominant, right? So here we have our G7 flat 9, and you can really see that when you go back and forth between these two voices, how many leading tones they have and how those voices fit together really nicely and they lead to each other, which is why they combine so well, and it's why we like to use the flat 9 when you're going back to when your tonal center is a minor sound, okay? So we have that once again, C minor 7 with the flat 5, and then our G7 flat 9. And finally, we get to a surprise, all right? So what's gonna happen here is I took a little bit of an artistic liberty and I simply increased our sound by a half step. So we have the exact same sound, but now up a half step to C sharp minor 7 flat 5, all right? I would consider this an artistic liberty, all right? Every now and then, if you are trying to think about where you can go harmonically and you want to do something that's not exactly around the circle, not exactly a 2-5-1 or a 6-2-5-1 or a 5 and a 4 or something like that, half steps work. Half steps of the exact same sound. And so that's what we have going on here. And then oddly enough, we have our Locrian scale going with that. So we have C sharp Locrian, which if you think about what is C sharp the T of, that's really the D major scale, right? So we have a descending D major scale, which we're calling C sharp Locrian here, and then that is going to bring us back to the original theme, all right? Now we are going to see again where we have C minor 6, right? So this is a little bit different of a flavor. We have seen several different flavors of C minor here. Here we have the C minor 6, and then we have our C sharp minor 6, because remember, anytime you introduce something, you want to use it a few times, all right? So we had the half step happened over here that brought us back to the original, but then we're going to use the half step again to end the piece. However, this time we're going to be using a little bit of a different sound. Whereas over here, we had the minor 7 flat 5. Down here, we're going to have the minor 6 sound, which is what this little cluster is right here. We have the 6 and the 5 right next to each other. It gives us a really nice little dissonant sound to add to the melancholy vibe, right? But then here's the deal. Because we have that minor 6, the C sharp Locrian didn't work, all right? It doesn't sound good if you play a C sharp minor 6 chord and then a C sharp Locrian. For this, what we actually need is our C sharp Dorian, all right? Now, if we think about Dorian, C sharp is the re of what key? And that would be B major, all right? So what we have, this is actually a really, really ugly scale to read. We have a lot of weird flats. We have F flat and G flat and C flat, right? But what we need is to remember that actually all this really is a B major scale, with a C sharp minor 6 underneath it. So as you can see, the whole theme of this piece is that we're not playing anything that we've never seen before. You know, even with our minor 7 flat 5, we're really just playing an F minor chord, and then the melody notes are what really turn, you know, a G7 flat 9 into the flat 9, right? So we're combining things, melodies with chords, but we're doing it in a more complicated way that give us more sophisticated sounds, like the minor 7 flat 5, the 7 with the flat 9. We're using a you know, Locrian scale and a Dorian scale of the same note, which are two different scales. However, we are very familiar with D major and B major, so hopefully, you know, once you frame these new sounds in the way of the context with what you already know, it will be accessible to you. And now, let's take a listen to the Melancholy Etude. If you enjoyed today's lesson, you can find this music and today's show notes on my website, pianodojo.com. Or if you'd like to show support for the Piano Dojo, you can subscribe and share this channel with anybody who has questions about the piano. Until next time, happy practicing.